General Davis stood in the command center beneath Mount Rushmore as alarms echoed through the facility. 3 years of secret preparation were about to be put to the ultimate test. His staff worked frantically at their stations, coordinating the deployment of weapons and troops that officially didn't exist. "Sir, all production facilities report full activation," Colonel Parker announced. "Hidden factories on Luna, Mars, and the asteroid belt are now running at maximum capacity." Davis watched the deployment screens showing human forces moving to defensive positions across dozens of star systems. The Zephyrians expected to face the same lightly armed colonies they had attacked 3 years ago. Instead, they would encounter a military force specifically designed to counter their tactics and technology. "What's the status of Project Prometheus?" Davis asked. Parker pulled up classified files on her screen. 1,000 enhanced soldiers are ready for immediate deployment. Another 5,000 are completing final training protocols. Project Prometheus represented humanity's most ambitious military advancement. Using technology reverse engineered from captured Zephyrian equipment, human scientists had developed biological enhancements that increased strength, speed, and reaction time. The enhanced soldiers could match alien warriors in physical combat while retaining human creativity and tactical thinking. Sergeant Mike Johnson led the first squad of enhanced soldiers as they boarded transport ships for deployment to the front lines. Johnson had volunteered for the program 18 months ago, undergoing genetic modifications that made him faster and stronger than any normal human. "Listen up," Johnson told his squad as their transport left Earth orbit. "We've trained for this moment for 2 years. The aliens think they're fighting regular humans. Show them what enhanced humans can do." The soldiers in Johnson's squad moved with fluid precision that would have been impossible for unmodified humans. Their enhanced reflexes and improved muscle density made them formidable opponents in close combat, while their human intelligence gave them advantages no Zephyrian warrior possessed. Dr. Moore supervised the emergency distribution of improved weapons to human ships throughout the fleet. The new plasma cannons could penetrate Zephyrian shields that had protected their ships during the First War, while improved armor plating could deflect alien energy weapons. "The Zephyrians made a critical mistake during the peace period," Moore explained to a group of ship commanders via video conference. "They shared their basic technology with us, thinking it would help build trust. What they didn't realize is that humans are natural improvers. We took their designs and made them better." He activated a display showing weapon test results. "Our plasma cannons fire 40% faster than Zephyrian originals and generate 60% more destructive power. Our shield systems can actually repel their energy weapons instead of just absorbing damage." Captain Hughes piloted the USS Defiance toward the enemy fleet approaching the Kepler system. His ship and 14 others represented humanity's newest weapon, stealth destroyers that could penetrate alien sensor networks and strike without warning. "Sir, we're detecting the lead elements of the Zephyrian attack force," reported Commander Chun from the sensor station. 300 ships in standard battle formation. Hughes studied the tactical display. The alien fleet moved in predictable patterns, following the same strategies they had used 3 years ago. They hadn't adapted their tactics because they didn't expect serious resistance. "Target their command ship," Hughes ordered. "Let's see how they handle a surprise attack." The Defiance and her sister ships move like ghosts through space, their stealth systems making them invisible to Zephyrian sensors. The aliens had no idea death was approaching until human plasma cannons opened fire at point-blank range. Colonel Parker coordinated the strategic response from her command center on Luna Station. Her tactical computers processed thousands of data points, tracking enemy movements and deploying human forces where they would be most effective. "Admiral Carter, we're seeing coordinated attacks on 7 different systems," Parker reported. "The aliens are trying to overwhelm our defenses with simultaneous strikes." Carter studied the battle map showing red symbols advancing toward human colonies. "Status of our hidden reserves?" "Deploying now, sir. The enemy has no idea we've tripled our military capacity during the peace period." Human reinforcements moved through space toward the threatened systems. Ships that had been built in secret shipyards, carrying weapons the aliens had never seen, crewed by soldiers who had trained specifically to fight Zephyr IANS. Dr. Warren worked in her laboratory, transmitting biological data about Zephyrian weaknesses to human forces in combat zones. Her 3 years of study were paying off as human soldiers used her research to exploit alien vulnerabilities. Their respiratory system is more fragile than ours, Warren explained in a briefing to Special Forces commanders. Certain gas compositions can incapacitate them without harming humans. I'm transmitting chemical formulas for battlefield deployment. The enhanced soldiers of Project Prometheus proved their worth in the first ground battles. When Zephyrian troops landed on the colony world of New Terra, they expected to face human defenders armed with basic projectile weapons. Instead, they encountered Sergeant Johnson's enhanced squad, soldiers who moved faster than Zephyrian eyes, could track and hit harder than alien armor could withstand. The battle lasted less than an hour before the surviving aliens retreated in confusion. Commander, Stone's intelligence network activated sleeper agents throughout Zephyrian space, human operatives who had posed as diplomats, traders, and researchers. For 3 years suddenly became saboteurs, striking at alien supply lines and communication centers. Sir, Agent Phoenix reports successful sabotage of the main Zephyrian supply depot, Lieutenant Martinez announced. Enemy logistics for the entire offensive have been disrupted. Stone smiled as he reviewed reports from agents across alien space. The Zephyrians had focused so much on their invasion plans that they had ignored security at home. Human agents moved freely through their territory, striking at targets the aliens thought were safe. Captain Blake led her squadron in a running battle with alien forces near Outpost 7. Her ship had been upgraded with the new weapons and shields, turning her modest patrol vessel into a formidable combat unit. Captain, the enemy is breaking off their attack, reported her tactical officer. They're retreating toward the neutral zone. Blake watched the alien ships withdraw after losing half their number to human defensive fire. They weren't expecting this level of resistance. The pattern repeated across human space as Zephyrian attack forces encountered defenders who were better armed, better trained, and better prepared than anything the aliens had expected. The surprise attacks that should have overwhelmed human colonies instead became costly defeats for the invaders. Dr. Moore's improved weapons proved devastatingly effective in ship-to-ship combat. Human plasma cannons punched through Zephyrian shields like they were made of paper, while alien energy weapons barely scratched improved human armor. Sir, we're receiving damage reports from enemy ships, reported the communications officer. On Admiral Carter's flagship, their weapons aren't penetrating our defenses. Carter watched the tactical display as human ships systematically destroyed alien vessels that couldn't fight back effectively. The Zephyrians built their strategy around the assumption that their technology was superior. They never considered that we might improve on their designs. The first day of renewed warfare ended with human forces claiming victory in every major engagement. Zephyrian commanders who had expected easy conquests instead found themselves facing an enemy that was stronger, faster, and more dangerous than they had imagined. General Davis reviewed battle reports in his command center, feeling satisfaction mixed with grim determination. "How many enemy ships destroyed?" he asked Colonel Parker. "Initial estimates suggest we've eliminated nearly 40% of their invasion force," Parker replied. "Our losses are minimal thanks to the new defensive systems." Davis nodded. The Zephyrians had made the same mistake that had cost them the first war. They had underestimated human adaptability and determination. But this time, humanity hadn't waited for the aliens to strike first. As night fell on Earth, human forces across the galaxy continued their counterattacks against surprised and confused alien invaders. The peace agreement had been a lie, but humanity's response was brutally honest. The Zephyrians had wanted war. Now they had it, and they were learning that humans were much better at warfare than anyone had imagined. The invasion that was supposed to end human resistance had instead marked the beginning of the alien empire's downfall. The morning sun of Kepler 442c, cast long shadows across the mining settlement of New Haven. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the main operations building, watching the daily routine unfold below him. Workers moved between the large industrial machines like ants following well-worn paths. The sound of drilling equipment echoed across the valley. Jake took a sip of his coffee and checked his watch. Another peaceful day on the frontier. He had been running this outpost for 3 years now, and every day felt the same. Wake up, check the mining reports, deal with equipment problems, file reports to Earth Command, and go to sleep. It was not the exciting life he had once known, but it was good enough. "Morning, Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez as she joined him on the deck. She carried her own cup of coffee and looked tired. Amy ran the security team for the outpost, though. There was not much security work to do. The biggest problems they faced were equipment theft and the occasional fight between workers. "Morning, Amy. How did the night shift go?" Jake asked. "Quiet as always. Martina has caught some kids trying to sneak into the equipment yard, but that was about it. No real problems." Amy leaned against the railing and watched the workers below. "Sometimes I wonder why we even need security out here." Jake smiled. "Better safe than sorry." "Besides, you know how Earth Command feels about following regulations?" Amy laughed. "Right. God forbid we break protocol on a mining planet in the middle of nowhere." Down in the settlement, the day was beginning for the 847 people who called. New Haven home. Dr. Peter Collins was already at work in the medical center, treating a miner who had injured his hand on a drilling machine. The doctor was a calm man in his 50s who had come to Kepler 442c to escape the crowded hospitals of Earth. He found the quiet life of frontier medicine much more to his liking. Engineer Lisa Thompson was checking the fusion reactors that powered the settlement. She was young for such an important job, but she knew the systems better than anyone. Lisa had designed many of the modifications that kept the old reactors running smoothly. She enjoyed the challenge of making things work with limited resources. The mining operations were the heart of New Haven. The planet was rich in rare earth metals that were needed for advanced technology back on Earth and the other human colonies. The work was hard and dangerous, but it paid well. Many of the miners were supporting families back home or saving money to start new lives on better worlds. Tony Parker supervised the morning shift at the main excavation site. He was a big man with strong hands and a loud voice. Tony had been mining for 20 years and knew every trick of the trade. He made sure the new workers learned to do their jobs safely. Too many young miners thought they could take shortcuts and ended up getting hurt. "Keep those support beams tight," Tony shouted to a group of workers setting up in a new tunnel. "I don't want to explain to your families why you got crushed because you were in a hurry." The workers nodded and continued their careful work. They all respected Tony and knew he was looking out for them. In the communication center, operator Susan Davis monitored the various radio channels that kept New Haven connected to the outside universe. Most days there was little traffic. Supply ships checked in when they were approaching the planet. Earth Command sent routine updates and requests for reports. Other human settlements in the sector shared weather information and safety warnings. Susan enjoyed the quiet work. She had served on busy starships where the communication channels never stopped crackling with urgent messages. The peaceful routine of New Haven was a welcome change. She could read books between calls and take time to actually think about the messages she received. The families in New Haven lived in small but comfortable housing units near the center of the settlement. Children attended school in a building that doubled as a community center. The teacher, Mrs. Helen Carter, had 38 students ranging in age from 6 to 16. She taught them the standard Earth curriculum while also preparing them for life on the frontier. Bill Hayes ran the equipment maintenance shop where broken machines were repaired and modified. He was a clever man who could fix almost anything with spare parts and creativity. Bill had learned his skills in the Earth military before coming to Kepler 442c to start a civilian life. He missed the excitement of his military days sometimes, but he enjoyed the satisfaction of keeping the settlement running smoothly. The settlement had everything needed for a comfortable life. There was a small store where people could buy supplies and personal items. A recreation center provided entertainment and exercise facilities. The dining hall served meals for workers who did not want to cook for themselves. A small church held services for those who wanted them. Captain Morrison finished his coffee and prepared to start his daily rounds. He would visit each section of the operation, check on the workers, and review the mining reports. It was routine work, but Jake took it seriously. These people depended on him to keep them safe and make sure the operation ran smoothly. As Jake walked through the settlement, he noticed how normal everything seemed. People went about their daily tasks without worry. Children played in the safe areas while their parents worked. The biggest concerns were equipment breakdowns and minor disputes between workers. None of them knew that 3 alien ships were already watching them from the edge of the star system. None of them suspected that their quiet, peaceful life was about to come to a violent end. They had built their little settlement on what they thought was an empty world. Far from any conflicts or dangers, the Zephyrian Empire had been observing human expansion for months. They had chosen New Haven as their first target because it seemed weak and isolated. The aliens believed that destroying one small human outpost would send a clear message to Earth about who controlled this part of the galaxy. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. The first wave of Zephyrian dropships broke through the atmosphere 2 hours after the bombardment ended. Jake Morrison watched them descend through his binoculars from the operations building. The alien vessels looked like metal teardrops with glowing engines. He counted 12 ships, each one large enough to carry at least 100 soldiers. "Amy, are your people in position?" Jake spoke into his radio. "Affirmative, Captain. We have teams at all the choke points. The miners are armed and ready at the secondary positions." Jake had spent the last 2 hours transforming New Haven from a peaceful settlement into a fortress. The mining tunnels provided perfect defensive positions. The industrial equipment had been moved to create barriers and weapon emplacements. The settlement's layout, designed for efficient mining operations, now served as a series of defensive kill zones. The dropships landed in the open area beyond the outer perimeter, just as Jake had expected. The aliens wanted room to deploy their forces and establish a base of operations. They probably thought the humans would try to run or hide. Commander Vexthal stood in the command ship and studied the human settlement through his viewing screen. The buildings looked simple and crude compared to Zephyrian architecture. The humans had built their colony like all their settlements, functional but unimpressive. "How many humans do our sensors detect?" Vexthal asked his tactical officer. "Approximately 800 life signs, Commander. Most are concentrated in the central buildings." Vexthal nodded. "They are hiding like prey animals. Deploy the ground forces. Tell them to capture as many humans as possible for interrogation. We need to learn about their military capabilities before we attack other colonies." The first Zephyrian warriors emerged from their ships wearing full combat armor and carrying energy weapons. They moved in tight formations, scanning for threats. The humans appeared to be cowering in their buildings, just as Vexthal had predicted. Tony Parker crouched behind a pile of mining equipment near the settlement's edge. He had 20 miners with him, all of them armed with human weapons from the emergency cache. Tony watched the aliens advance and smiled grimly. The Zephyrians were walking directly into the first kill zone. "Remember," Tony whispered into his radio, "wait for my signal. Let them get close." The advancing aliens were impressive creatures. Standing 7 feet tall with 4 arms and reptilian features, their armor gleamed in the afternoon sun. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. They moved with confidence. Clearly expecting little resistance from the human miners, Tony waited until the lead group was 50 meters away. Then he pressed the detonator. The explosions erupted in sequence along the alien advance route. Tony and his miners had spent 2 hours placing mining charges in carefully chosen locations. The blasts sent dirt and debris flying and created instant chaos in the alien ranks. "Now!" Tony shouted. The miners opened fire with their rifles and shotguns. The aliens had shields that could stop energy weapons, but they were not designed for solid projectiles. Several Zephyrian warriors fell in the first volley. The aliens recovered quickly and returned fire with their plasma weapons. The air filled with deadly energy beams that cut through metal and stone. Tony and his team took cover behind their barriers and continued shooting. Amy Rodriguez was positioned at the main entrance to the settlement with her security team. She watched the alien advance through her scope and waited for her moment. The Zephyrians were trying to flank Tony's position, which would bring them directly into her field of fire. Security team, targets approaching from the east. Range 400 meters, fire at will. Amy's team had the best weapons and the most training. They opened fire with precision rifles and managed to drop 6 aliens before the enemy realized where the shots were coming from. The battle quickly spread across the settlement's perimeter. The Zephyrians had superior technology and numbers, but they had underestimated human tactics and determination. Every building became a fighting position. Every piece of equipment became cover for human defenders. Dr. Collins worked frantically in his medical center as the first wounded began arriving. He had prepared as best he could, but he was not used to treating combat injuries. The miner with a plasma burn to his leg screamed as Collins cleaned the wound. "Hold still," Collins said firmly. "I need to stop the bleeding." Lisa Thompson monitored the power grid from the reactor control room. The settlement needed full power for the defensive systems Jake had activated. She watched the energy readings carefully and made adjustments to keep everything running smoothly. The fighting intensified as more Zephyrian troops joined the assault. They had expected to overwhelm the humans quickly, but the defenders were putting up fierce resistance. The aliens began using heavier weapons and calling for orbital support. Commander Vexthal watched the battle reports with growing frustration. His intelligence had indicated that humans were weak and poorly armed. The colony was supposed to fall within minutes. Instead, his forces were taking heavy casualties and making little progress. "How many warriors have we lost?" Vexthal demanded. 143 dead, Commander. Another 60 wounded. Vexthal could not believe it. Against miners and farmers? The humans appear to have military training and better weapons than we expected. They are also using their knowledge of the terrain to great advantage. Jake Morrison moved between defensive positions, coordinating the battle and encouraging his people. He carried a rifle and had already killed 3 aliens himself. His military training from years ago was coming back to him like muscle memory. He found Bill Hayes in the equipment maintenance shop, which had been converted into a weapons manufacturing center. Bill was modifying mining tools into combat weapons and creating improvised explosives. "How are we doing on ammunition?" Jake asked. "Getting low on rifle rounds, but I've been converting the plasma cutters into directed energy weapons. They are not as good as the alien guns, but they will work." Jake nodded. "What about explosives? Plenty of mining charges left." "I have been rigging them with remote detonators. We can turn this whole settlement into one big booby trap if we need to." The Zephyrians had brought 2,000 warriors for what they thought would be an easy victory. After 6 hours of fighting, they had lost nearly 400 soldiers and controlled only the outer edge of the settlement. The humans continued to fight from prepared positions and showed no signs of surrendering. As darkness fell, Jake called for a status report from all positions. His people were tired and low on ammunition, but their morale remained high. They had proven that humans could fight aliens and win. "We bloodied their nose today," Jake announced over the radio. "But this is just the beginning. They will bring more troops and heavier weapons. We need to be ready." Amy's voice came back over the radio. "Captain, we intercepted alien communications. They are calling for reinforcements, a lot of reinforcements." Jake looked out at the alien camp where fires burned and medical teams worked on wounded soldiers. The Zephyrians had learned their first lesson about fighting humans. Soon they would learn that humans fight harder when cornered. "Then we had better get ready for round 2, Jake said, "because we are not going anywhere." The night was going to be long, and tomorrow would bring new challenges. But the humans of New Haven had sent a clear message to the galaxy. Attacking Earth colonies would not be easy. The alarm began screaming at exactly 14:37 local time. Susan Davis was reading a book when her communication equipment suddenly came alive with warning signals. She dropped the book and stared at her screens in shock. 3 large objects had just appeared on the sensor grid, hanging in space directly above New Haven. "Captain Morrison to communications immediately," Susan spoke into her microphone with a shaking voice. "We have unknown contacts in orbit." Jake was inspecting a broken drill when his radio crackled to life. He had never heard Susan sound scared before. He dropped his tools and ran toward the communications center, his heart beating fast. Amy Rodriguez was already there when Jake arrived. She stood behind Susan, looking at the sensor displays with a grim expression. The 3 objects were huge, much larger than any human ship that visited New Haven. "How long have they been there?" Jake asked. "They just appeared, Captain. No warning, no approach vector." "They just materialized out of nowhere," Susan replied. Amy pointed at the screen. "Those are not human ships. Look at the design and the size. Each one is bigger than anything in our Navy." Jake studied the display. The ships had strange, curved hulls with weapon ports clearly visible along their sides. They did not look peaceful. "Any communication attempts from them?" "Nothing yet." "They're just sitting there," Susan said. Jake made a decision. "Open a channel. Let me talk to them." Susan worked her controls and nodded. "Channel open, Captain." "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the New Haven mining settlement. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the speakers crackled with an alien voice speaking in perfect English. "Human settlement. I am Commander Vexthal of the Zephyrian Empire. You are trespassing in our territory? You will evacuate this planet immediately." Jake looked at Amy, who shrugged. Neither of them had ever heard of the Zephyrian Empire. "Commander Vexthal, this planet was surveyed and claimed by Earth Colonial Authority 6 years ago. We have legal rights to this settlement." The alien's voice turned cold. "Your Earth laws mean nothing here. This sector belongs to the Zephyrian Empire. You have 1 of your hours to begin evacuation. Any humans remaining after that time will be considered invaders and dealt with accordingly." Amy stepped forward. "Captain, we cannot evacuate 847 people in 1 hour. It is impossible. We would need days just to load everyone onto transport ships." Jake keyed the microphone again. "Commander, we need more time. We have families here, children. Even if we agreed to leave, we cannot do it in 1 hour." "That is not our concern," Vexthal replied. 1 hour, comply or face the consequences." The communication channel went dead. Jake, Amy, and Susan stared at each other in silence for a moment. "What do we do?" Susan asked. Jake was already moving. "Amy, get your security team together. Full alert status." "Susan, send an emergency message to Earth Command and any human ships in the area. Tell them we are under threat from hostile aliens." "What about the evacuation?" Amy asked. "We will prepare for it, but we cannot move everyone in 1 hour. We need to buy time somehow." Amy nodded and spoke into her radio. "All security personnel report to headquarters immediately." "This is not a drill." Jake ran to his office and opened his secure files. New Haven had been built as a mining settlement, but Jake had military experience. He had insisted on certain precautions when the settlement was established. Hidden in various locations around New Haven were emergency supplies, weapons, and defensive equipment. Most of the colonists did not know about them. The settlement's public address system came to life. "Attention all residents. This is Captain Morrison. We have received demands from alien vessels to evacuate the planet. This is not a drill. All families should gather essential supplies and prepare for possible evacuation. Remain calm and wait for further instructions." The reaction was immediate. People stopped their work and looked up at the sky. Some parents ran to collect their children from school. Others stood frozen, not sure what to do. Tony Parker was supervising work in the main excavation when the announcement came. He looked at his crew and made a quick decision. Shut down the equipment. Everyone report to the staging area. Dr. Collins was treating a patient when he heard the announcement. He quickly finished bandaging the miner's hand and began preparing. The medical center for a possible emergency treatment. Lisa Thompson was in the reactor control room when the alarm sounded. She looked at her instruments and considered the situation. The reactors powered everything in the settlement. If they had to evacuate, someone would need to safely shut them down. If they stayed to fight, they would need maximum power. She decided to keep them running at full capacity. The hour passed slowly. Jake spent the time organizing his security team and reviewing the settlement's defensive options. Amy distributed weapons to the security personnel and established checkpoints around the perimeter. They had 12 trained security officers and about 40 miners with military experience. As the deadline approached, Jake stood on the observation deck with Amy and watched the sky. He had sent several more messages to the alien ships asking for more time and trying to negotiate. There had been no response. At exactly 15:37, the first plasma blast hit the outer mining facility. The explosion lit up the afternoon sky and sent a shockwave through the settlement. A second blast followed, then a third. The storage buildings where the rare earth metals were kept disappeared in balls of fire. Jake grabbed his radio. All stations. We are under attack. Implement emergency protocols immediately. The alien ships had opened fire without warning. Jake counted 37 people working in the outer facilities. He knew most of them were dead. Amy was already moving. Security teams to defensive positions. Medical teams to emergency stations. Everyone else to the shelters. The bombardment continued for 10 minutes. The aliens targeted the most visible buildings and the main mining equipment. They seemed to be trying to destroy the settlement's ability to function while leaving the residential areas mostly untouched. When the firing stopped, Jake could see fires burning across the outer areas of New Haven. The main excavation site was damaged but not destroyed. Most of the housing units were intact. The alien voice came over the communication system again. Human settlement, you have seen what our weapons can do. Surrender now, or we will destroy everything. Jake looked at Amy, who was checking her weapon. He thought about the 37 people who had just died. He thought about the families hiding in the shelters. He thought about his responsibility to protect them. Susan, open the channel, Jake said. Channel open, Captain. Jake keyed the microphone and spoke in a steady voice. Commander Vextel, you just killed 37 innocent people. We are not soldiers. We are miners and families. If you want this planet, you will have to come down here and take it. There was silence for a moment. Then Vextel spoke, and Jake could hear amusement in the alien's voice. Very well, human. We accept your challenge. Prepare to die. Dawn brought no peace to New Haven. Jake Morrison had not slept during the night. He spent the dark hours moving between defensive positions, checking on his people, and preparing for the next assault. The aliens had been quiet, but their ships continued to arrive. Jake counted 6 more vessels in orbit by morning. Amy Rodriguez met him in the communications center where Susan Davis was monitoring alien transmissions. The equipment had been damaged in the fighting, but Susan had managed to repair it enough to intercept some enemy communications. What are they saying? Jake asked, but Susan looked tired and worried. They are angry, Captain, really angry. Their commander is calling for massive reinforcements. He wants to level the entire settlement. How many more troops are they bringing? We estimate another 8,000 soldiers, plus heavy weapons and siege equipment. They are not taking any chances this time. Amy shook her head. We cannot fight 8,000 aliens with what we have left. We lost 60 people yesterday, and we are almost out of ammunition. Jake understood the mathematics. They had fought brilliantly against the first assault, but they were still just miners and security guards facing a professional military force. The odds were impossible. How long until the reinforcements arrive? He asked Susan. 6 hours, maybe. Less. Jake made his decision. We are not giving up. We just need to change our strategy. Bill Hayes had worked through the night converting the settlement's industrial equipment into weapons and traps. When Jake found him in the maintenance shop, Bill was attaching explosives to mining charges and rigging them with motion sensors. "Bill, I need to know about the tunnel system, all of it." Bill wiped grease from his hands and pulled out a map of the mining operations. "We have about 40 kilometers of tunnels under and around the settlement. Most of them connect to the main excavation site. Can we move people through them without being detected?" "Sure, the tunnels are shielded from most sensors because of the metal or in the rock. The aliens probably do not even know they exist." Jake studied the map carefully. An idea was forming in his mind. It was dangerous and would require perfect timing, but it might work. Tony Parker was positioning his miners in new defensive positions when Jake found him. Tony had lost 8 men in the previous day's fighting, but his remaining crew was still ready to fight. "Tony, I need you to do something that sounds crazy," Jake said. "I am listening, Captain." "When the aliens attack today, I want you to fall back. Make it look like you are retreating in panic. Lead them into the main excavation site." Tony frowned. "That is our strongest defensive position." "Why would we abandon it?" "Because we are going to bury them in it." Dr. Collins was treating wounded in the medical center when the alien bombardment began again. This time it was much heavier than before. Plasma bolts rained down on the settlement, destroying buildings and setting fires. The aliens were not trying to capture the colony anymore. They wanted to crush it completely. Lisa Thompson worked frantically in the reactor control room as explosions shook the building. The power grid was taking damage, but she managed to keep the fusion reactors running. Jake's plan would need all the power she could provide. The new Zephyrian assault began with overwhelming force. Thousands of alien warriors advanced from multiple directions, supported by heavy weapons and armored vehicles. They had learned from their previous defeats and were taking no chances. Commander Vexthal watched the attack from his command ship with satisfaction. This time there would be no surprises. His forces would crush the human resistance and send a clear message to Earth about the price of defying the Zephyrian Empire. The human defenders fought desperately but were quickly overwhelmed. Tony Parker and his miners retreated from their positions, firing as they fell back toward the center of the settlement. It looked like a panicked withdrawal. Amy Rodriguez coordinated the retreat from her command post. The security teams leapfrogged from position to position, trying to slow the alien advance while protecting the civilians. The plan was working, but it required her people to take enormous risks. The Zephyrians pushed forward aggressively, sensing victory. They had lost many soldiers in the previous day's fighting and wanted revenge. The humans appeared to be breaking under the pressure of the massive assault. Jake Morrison watched from the operations building as his people executed the retreat. It was agonizing to see his settlement being overrun, but he had to trust the plan. Everything depended on timing. The aliens reached the main excavation site and began pouring into the tunnels, pursuing the retreating humans. This was exactly what Jake had hoped for. The Zephyrians were so focused on victory that they were not thinking about the dangers of fighting in an unfamiliar underground environment. Tony Parker led his miners deeper into the tunnel system, making sure the aliens followed. The Zephyrians came after them in large numbers, eager to finish off the human resistance. They had no idea they were walking into a carefully prepared trap. Bill Hayes crouched in a hidden position near the main excavation controls. He watched alien soldiers streaming into the tunnels and waited for Jake's signal. In his hands were the detonators for hundreds of mining charges placed throughout the underground complex. The plan was simple but required perfect execution. The humans would retreat into the deepest parts of the tunnel system, leading as many aliens as possible underground. Then they would trigger a massive explosion that would collapse the entire excavation site. Susan Davis monitored the battle from the communications center and provided updates to Jake. "Estimated 4,000 aliens in the tunnel system now, Captain. Tony's team is at the evacuation point." Jake grabbed his radio. "All teams, this is Morrison. Execute Protocol 0 immediately. Repeat, execute Protocol 0. This was the signal everyone had been waiting for. The remaining human defenders activated emergency evacuation procedures and began moving to predetermined safety zones outside the blast area. Tony Parker and his miners reached the deepest evacuation tunnel and began climbing toward the surface through a hidden exit. Behind them, thousands of alien soldiers continued their pursuit through the main tunnel network. Amy Rodriguez pulled her security teams back to the outer perimeter and established a defensive line. They would need to hold their positions for another 10 minutes while the evacuation was completed. Dr. Collins and his medical staff moved the wounded to the emergency shelter that had been prepared outside the settlement. It was not much protection, but it was better than staying in the buildings. Lisa Thompson initiated the reactor shutdown sequence and ran for the exit. The explosion would destroy the power plant, but there was no choice. She had done everything possible to keep the systems running until the last moment. Jake Morrison stood in the operations building and watched his settlement being overrun by alien forces. In 5 minutes, he would destroy everything he had built to save the people he was responsible for protecting. Bill Hayes waited in his hidden position as the last human defenders evacuated the area. Thousands of alien soldiers were now trapped in the tunnel system below. He looked at the detonators in his hands and took a deep breath. "All stations, this is Morrison," Jake announced over the radio. "Detonation in 30 seconds. Take cover." The countdown began as the humans of New Haven prepared to make their final stand. They had turned their home into a weapon, and they were about to use it against their enemies. 10 seconds, Jake announced. Bill Hayes pressed all the detonators at once. The explosion was visible from space.